Well, hi there. This is my follow-up to the video I made yesterday. I went down to the Goose Pond to see Easter and wanted to get on the subject of what brought me to Montana and how I would say Bleeb has been a part of my life, or maybe not a part of my life. But it's a funny story. But the thing is I went down there and my bird had been attacked a few weeks or so ago, and he's got a huge scab on the back of his neck that's been healing. And something that crossed my mind yesterday when I was visiting the bird, and after I left and everything, I was like, "Hey, you realize my bird was put through a very traumatic experience, and so the last two times I visited him, he was a little bit harder to catch, and he seemed like he didn't want to be handled as much. He just seemed a little different, like he's just not the same bird. And I thought, that really hit the nail on the head, because what I went down there to bring up was that uh, I've been going in and out of visionary state since I was at least 6 years old, and this is how Rosie Clearlight and Bill Lee were both brought to my attention for the first time. And the really exciting thing about it is there's a form of paranormal activity going on where the seer, myself, I go into a visionary slip where it's just like reality. It's just like another day. You're not in a dream or any surreal place, and information is delivered to you that might be remote to you for that time. And so we have no way of knowing who either of these people are. So the interesting thing is, I was able to come across both of these people at approximately the same time. So later on, I moved to Colorado, and I was introduced to Rosie in 1996 around springtime. Well, around that same time, I went to see Frontline Assembly, and I was kind of hoping to meet Bill Lieb, so I went up to the tour bus and I visited with his bandmate Reese Fulber for a little bit. But then when Bill Lieb came in, we made eye contact and they asked me to leave, so I didn't get to talk to Bill Lieb, but you could say that's the first time I met him. And so it's almost like Rosie and Bill are kind of like a sort of a counterpart in my life, for me. So like, I seen her in my vision a couple times, but she wasn't talked about very much. But then we met and we became best friends. And then, but then Bill Lee was brought up a lot. It's like I met him several times in my visions, and he asked me, "Whatever you do, don't forget who I am." And it just seemed like, make sure you remember this person. And then I finally meet him, and it seemed like I don't know if it was bad timing or if the guy just don't like me, but me and Bill just never really made friends. Like I have a way to contact him. I can write him, I can call him, I can send him things in the mail, but he doesn't really talk to me, and so that's been very makes the whole thing really complicated. Anyways, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about what's going on right now. Is I've been taking care of Rosie Clearlight, and I came up here about 13 years or so ago, and she ended up, she had a lot of other problems. She'd been in a wheelchair and had been quadriplegic before I met her, and since I've met her, she's been becoming better. And by the time I got up here, she's been able to get up and do some walking. So it's like I watched somebody who's been put in a really bad place recover and have a great attitude. So she's been sort of like a teacher, somebody to teach me about spiritual matters. And this is one of them. Is I call this spiritual survival. Like no matter what happens to you, you have to know spiritual survival. Otherwise, you're going to buy into heartbreak and depression. So, anyways, with that being said, Rosie just died a couple weeks ago, and then her boyfriend Gary, they were the same age, had the same problem, died in April, and they both died of cancer. And they had a great attitude, and they're a good example of how you could to be brave when you die. So, anyways, I'm in here packing out the house, and I thought I would, tell a little bit about my story about how I got here and how I met Rosie and stuff. So, what I'm doing is getting everything gathered up. I got the artwork here, I got the odds and ends, and there's Gary's old pile of dirty movies if anybody wants those. Now, this is Rosie, probably in 1986. She was a helicopter mechanic working out in the Gulf of Mexico, and she had a fall accident out there on the platform. So she was able to finish out her work week, but later on her injury completed itself, and she actually lost use of her hands and feet. So so small miracle is well, this doesn't happen for very many people. She recovered. So yeah, Rosie was a pilot in training. She was almost certified. And so in a roundabout way, it's funny to think that she's the one who took me under her wing when I needed somebody, because I was ready to leave Denver in 2009, and she said, Jody, I've got the money. So she put me on a bus and sent me here. So yeah, I took care of Rosie till she died, and so that's her favorite jewelry there. Her daughter made that. That's her ashes. So we're gonna have a ash scattering ceremony as soon as I'm able. And so yeah, I really want to honor Rosie. She's an old artist type of person, and I would say she's an old hippie from the West Coast, being from the Berkeley area. So this person has just been a really good friend of mine, and she doesn't necessarily listen to industrial music. But I've turned her on to some of my other electronic stuff. She'll listen to the softer stuff with me. Anyway, so that's how I got here. Little Rosie pose. And the reason being is because Rosie's one of the few people who I could just talk to about anything. Because what's happening here is when I was 6 years old, I had this vision thing. And it kind of came back a little bit later on. I think it happened off and on until I was about 11 or 12. And then it kind of got silent for a while. But then when I moved to Denver, after I met Rosie, it all started catching up. And there were more of these vision things going on. And that's when I met Bleeb a couple times. I had another chance to meet him in '98 when they went to Denver. And so that turned into a complete and total nightmare. And so, I don't know, I was really struggling. It was a really hard time for me. And eventually I got back in touch with Rosie. And when I was ready to leave Denver, she had the money. So anyways, this kind of became a problem between me and my friends and stuff like that. Like where people like, Jody, you really need to shut the fuck up, like stop talking about this stuff. It doesn't make sense. It sounds like you need to see a shrink and all this. And so that's very frustrating and it's very embarrassing. And I'm going to tell you why in a little bit. But anyways, I'm just going to briefly tell you about myself growing up, for that matter, and why, I like industrial music, how it's part of my life. So I consider myself more second generation. This is my dad's music. So, I was like 2 years old or 3 years old. My dad caught me getting into his records. And I really got in trouble for that. And that's why I'm crying. But that's when he realized, I love his music. And he thought that was really cool. And then later on, we were in Port Huron. So I got to be about, 4 or 5 in this picture. So his guy friends were coming over and practicing in the basement. And I realized I want to make music. These guys were listening to good music, like industrial music. This is like 1979 into 1980 here. There's a picture of my dad. He was the DJ. He had the record collection. People came over to party with him. He was like, our house in Port Huron was like the center for industrial music. And then we moved to Key West. That's my dad in Key West. He was a big Joy Division fan. So the stuff we were listening to, like around 80, 81, it was like Cabaret Voltaire, Joy Division. He was a big Ultravox fan as well. There I am, 6 years old. So that's how old I was when I was having that visionary stuff starting out. So like after Christmas time, I met Billy in my visions, and that's where I know because I got a trampoline for Christmas, and I really wanted to bring him over because I found out he likes the kind of music my dad listens to. But just for fun, that's me, my cousin. So I've always been a bird person, and those are my first birds. That's Rainbow and Hannibal the duck. Those are Muscovy ducks. They're a lot like little geese. So I've always had birds in my life instead of a cat or a dog. At any rate, what I wanted to get back on is trauma. The reason I've been going in and out of visionary state is trauma. And from what I understand, this is Suicide Awareness Month or something like that. And I just thought, hey, you realize what makes people suicidal? There's a lot of things in our culture that are affecting us because we are actually living in the easiest times for survival and human history. But now everything's shifting over to emotional and mental accomplishments. And what we're looking for now is like, okay, it's finding love and acceptance in our relationships in our life. So if anything, I think I've had kind of an easy life, but what makes it complicated was maybe the ongoings between my parents. So before we moved to Florida, they had a really big fight and they almost broke up, and then a few years later had a really big fight and pretty dramatic, had the police department and ambulance arriving there. So So that could be why I've been going in and out of visionary state. It may be a coping mechanism put there to just kind of help me, have a friend. So, I had Billy, I didn't know Rosie really well, but I was introduced to Billy a few times and I thought this was my friend. And I looked forward to meeting him again because he was an interesting little kid. And so I'm pretty sure he was Bill Lee, but Billy won't remember this because I was in visionary state. And so the people in my visions don't remember the same thing. But anyways, I kind of have to explore why it had to be Bill Lee, and so I'm going to do other videos to explore why did it have to be Bill, because I kind of feel bad for him because if he's not happy to have met me, and if I'm somebody that's kind of like weird to him, like I'm very sorry, but for some reason he's never said anything harsh to me. He's always like, hey, you're welcome to call anytime you want, yada yada yada, and well, he doesn't really talk to me though, but I think he's just trying to let me know, like, hey, don't worry about it. I don't have a problem with you, and I think that's great, but the thing that, so when I get into this story, really the whole complication is that we haven't been able to talk, and it has left a lot of room for misunderstandings. But at any rate, I think everything's all good now, with Bill and all that. But so anyways, it's kind of interesting going down and seeing my bird had suffered an attack a few weeks ago, and now he's suffering from the post-traumatic stress. Well, I kind of think that's a lot to what industrial music has to do with, is that we're in a society that is dealing with post-traumatic stress, and the funny thing is mankind brings it on themselves through the way we run our lives. We have these big wars, we've had the Industrial Revolution, and then it's just right down to the way we run our house and the way we run our home. So my stories are probably nothing compared to other people's stories, but it's funny, because we're a household that listens to industrial music, and we have like a hippie beatnik kind of thing going, and we still run into problems with, not knowing how to get along and take care of each other, and so that's probably why I'm a little bit crazy and have these unusual experiences. But the interesting thing is they're not just my imagination, and they might actually reveal useful information at some point, so we'll have fun exploring this rather than let it be a problem anymore. I feel like I've come a long ways overcoming all this type of trauma, and now it's kind of safe to talk about it. And so but yeah, maybe Billy was there to help me to deal with trauma, and industrial music is a really good healing medicine for people who have been through trauma in their life, and that might be why it's not normal music. Is not there just to be entertaining. Some of it is beautiful and fun, and some of it deals with the dark stuff. So anyways, I hope to move forward and help to keep the music scene alive and help to inspire other people, and hopefully actually make some music besides just being a DJ and a philosopher. So I like to share my thoughts on philosophy, and hopefully help other people who are making artwork and music stay inspired and find their inner strength. So until later, I'm going to take a break, and we'll talk to you soon.